All right, fellas, 3 down, 1 to go. Let's talk the Midwest region where Houston is the number 1 seed, Tennessee is 2, and we've got some interesting ones. A shorthanded Kentucky team. They say Lamont Butler's going to try and get back in the lineup. They are at 3. We've got Purdue and Clemson 4 and 5. Now, Chris, you just said that Houston is one of your picks to get to the Final Four. So tell us why in this Midwest region you have Houston headed to their home state of Texas to play in San Antonio.
And listen, I am not going to analytics like you guys because they will be top 10 and everything in my mind. But what they do well is they defend at an elite level. This is their third straight number 1 seed, right? What Kelvin Sampson done there is absolutely remarkable. And again, we're talking about bringing in Uzan. Look what he's doing for that program. You're talking about L.J. Crowder, transfer from Baylor, has been tremendous for a small guard to do that. But what they do best, and it's the it factor, right? It's what the numbers sometimes can't quantify. They put their mitts on you. There's an air of invincibility. They went into 2 years ago into the Big 12 from the AAC, and look what this man, Kelvin Sampson, has done to that league. Look where Kansas is, right? Kansas always dominated. Look what Kelvin Sampson has done, won the Big 12 tournament and won the Big 12. This man is all about winning and all about business. And the one thing they can do, they should have gone to the Final Four last year if Shed doesn't get hurt. What they do best, and I think this is when Kelvin Sampson finally gets his first championship, they shoot the ball as well. You got Cryer, you got Sharp, you got Uzan, you got Terrence Arsenault. This team is really good. And inside, I mean, Joe Tugler and Roberts, they are physical. And so I believe that this team is the most complete team. There was a time, I'll say this last point earlier, they had no quad 1 wins, and they just ran through the Big 12. This team is every bit as good as advertised, and I think they're going to breeze through this region.
Chris, I'm not going to lie to you. I don't disagree with you. We're all picking different teams, but if we were all allowed to share these picks, I would be right with you on Houston Island. My only caveat is the health of Juwan Roberts. If we're talking about Cooper Flagg and we're talking about Grant Nelson and we're talking about Tyrese Hunter, we also have to acknowledge that Juwan Roberts is a big piece for Houston. And you said it last year, injuries are what ultimately blocked their path to the Final Four. We can only hope that that won't be the case this year. If injuries do play a factor, or if somebody else ends up making a run to San Antonio, I think it is most likely to be Tennessee. The annual narrative on Rick Barnes' teams is that they're great defensively, but the Achilles heel is the offense. But that is not the case this year. It is true that they are one of the best defenses in college basketball yet again. A top 3 defense in the country for the 4th straight year. Absolutely incredible stuff for Rick Barnes. But they are also top 20 in the country offensively. And they did that after replacing the vast majority of their lineup. It's been really interesting to see the way Chaz Lanier has been able to step right into that role that Dalton Knecht vacated. And I will tell you something else, guys. To me, we can talk about Chaz Lanier, but the one who is the key to this team is Zakai Ziegler. I talked about him on HQ over the course of the weekend. This guy is one of the best leaders, one of the best point of attack defenders. And just when you need that alpha mentality on your team, this is the guy you want. Chaz Lanier is going to be the leading scorer. He's going to make the big shots. But Zakai Ziegler, let's call him Mighty Mouse, he is just awesome. I think you pair him with Akpara, it gives them more of a pick and roll tandem than we've had over the year. Isaac, you've talked about that. They're more of a pick and roll threat this year. This is a better offensive Tennessee team than we've seen, and they're capable of beating you in more than one way on that offensive end of the floor. Last year, if Dalton Knecht had a cold night, they were going to lose. If Chaz Lanier has a cold night this year, they can still beat you. So that's why, to me, if it's not Houston, it's most likely to be Tennessee. But Trotter, as we have done in this exercise, we kind of explore the top 2 favorites to get to the Final Four. But if there's an unlikely, because there's bound to be an unlikely Final Four team somewhere in here, if it comes from the Midwest region, who would it be?
Well, I'm not allowed to talk about Milos Uzan anymore, so that's why I have to pick Gonzaga. This is a group that I think is kind of trending in the right direction at the right time. And this team is the number 2 half-court offense in college basketball this year. And in the NCAA tournament, when the game slows down a little bit and you can't score in transition and you got to run something and get good actions and get good shots, I trust Gonzaga to do that at a very high level. So Houston is definitely my favorite. Tennessee, the case is made, is fine. But Gonzaga, I think, is a really, really scary 8th seed. And it's also because they're one of the most unlucky teams in college basketball this year. Get this, they're 0-7 in games decided by 6 points or fewer. Like they had toss-up games at the under 4 timeout 7 times and somehow found a way to lose every single one of those. Like, you're supposed to go 4-3 or 3-4 in those type of games. Gonzaga goes 0-7. You could easily make a case for this group that they're underseeded. They're very, very talented. This was a preseason top 5 team. None of that has changed. Ryan Nembhard, one of the elite initiator point guards in college basketball. Graham Ike, obviously, we know what he can do in the paint. But I also think Gonzaga's staff does a really nice job of matchup hunting. They did a great job against St. Mary's. They inserted Braden Huff into the lineup, went with 2 bigs next to Ike. They hadn't played that lineup much at all year long, got him a bunch of buckets. And more importantly, Gonzaga's defense has started to trend in the right direction. They're a top 20 defense since February 1st. If those 2 things coalesce, if Juwan Roberts is a little bit banged up, Houston is going to have a really, really tough time in that round of 32 game. The winner of that, I think, makes the Final Four.
Guys, one of the reasons why I'm so intrigued with this Midwest region is I think there are more potential first-round upsets in the Midwest than maybe any other region. And I look down and I see, of those 8 first-round matchups, I've got at least 4 that I think could flip. So, Chris, I'm going to start with you. If you had one circled on your bracket, again, make the people at home some money. Who's the upset hunter that's going to get it done in the Midwest region?
For me, it's McNeese State, right? And you're talking about a team and Will Wade, who probably won't be there very long after this game, has found a niche. He was a head coach at LSU and got caught up in a bit of a scandal there, but his team has dominated. And what he did was again, which a lot of these teams I mentioned before with Vanderbilt and some of these other teams and like Penny Hardaway has gone in a portal. He's got high major players, and now they're playing in a league, a mid-major league, a one-bid league that they dominate, and you don't see these guys coming, and you have a high major coach in Will Wade. They get up and down the floor. Aylin Breed, Garcia, they have guys who can score the basketball. They're very athletic. And this team, when you play guys like this and these transfers, and you guys would know this from the high school circuit, these kids play against each other for years. It's not like it was 20, 30 years ago. These guys are not going to be afraid to play against anybody, certainly not Clemson. Clemson hot off Elite Eight last year, Brad Barnell, great coach. But Will Wade is going to have these guys loaded to bear. And if you want to make some money, this is one of the trendiest picks, I believe, McNeese State. I wouldn't be shocked at all if they pulled off this upset.
And this is a 12-5 every year. It seems there is a 12-5 that comes through. It's also worth noting, Will Wade, he went to Clemson. He's long been rumored.
I left that out.
Yeah, Brad Brownell has been on this is finally a coaching cycle where he is not on the hot seat, because all he has done is fight off, the people who wanted his job. But it has been speculated for years that Will Wade was a potential successor there. And so it is in one sense ironic, but in another sense very consistent with the committee's ability to find cinematic narratives, shall we say, that Will Wade is leading his McNeese State team against Clemson in the first round. Trotter, I'm going to go with a team here that you and I have talked about, and that's Xavier. Xavier was one of those teams that, let's just call it like it is, they were nervous on Selection Sunday. They hoped they had enough. They ended up getting it done. They're going to open with Texas in a play-in game. This is a Xavier team that I think will ultimately get past Texas, and then I think could give Illinois a real scare. Illinois, just like Chris has said that Baylor was Jekyll and Hyde, to me, Illinois is the biggest Jekyll and Hyde team in college basketball. Trotter, I know you're going to get into that in a minute, but this is a Xavier team that plays as hard as anyone, that has inside-out scoring presence, that if you look at their quality of results and their quality of play over the course of the last couple of months, I think they are clearly better than where they are seated. Sean Miller even said it. He said, listen, we are not the same team that we were in the first 2 months of the season. If you look at who we are now versus where we were in the beginning of the season, we are a team that is vastly different. I think Xavier is poised to not only win that Texas game, I've got Xavier beating Illinois as well, which would potentially set up a Sweet 16 matchup with Xavier, and Tennessee. And that could be fascinating to me. But Trotter, what's the counterpoint here?
Yeah, this is a fascinating little quadrant here because I think you could make a case that Illinois is the healthiest group of all of these teams. Xavier has still had some injuries that they've had to go through. Kentucky, like we've talked about, the 3 seed. Lamont Butler, is his shoulder even okay? Like the fact that he's even considering coming back to play is impressive. We already know that Jackson Robinson is going to be out. So I'm looking at this Illinois team. Consistency has not been a strength of this unit all year long. But there is real talent here, and I think Will Riley's emergence as a go-to playmaker changes the math for this group a lot. He's 6'8". He's very slippery at the top of the key. That spin move to get into the paint is terrific. And Brad Underwood's teams are terrific offensive rebounding teams, and they're finally fully healthy. Merez Johnson is now back. The sickness that plagued this team throughout most of Big Ten play is also gone. Xavier has had troubles this year stopping teams that are extremely good on the offensive glass. That would be Illinois' path to do it. And then I also look at that matchup against Kentucky. If Illinois is able to get there in the round of 32, Kentucky struggles on the offensive glass. Like those are the areas where I think Illinois is going to have to get after it. And, you know, the narrative with Illinois has been the same thing all year long. They take a ton of threes and they don't make enough of them. When Illinois is not the worst three-point shooting team in the history of the sport, this is a good team. Like when they shoot more than like 31% from three-point range, Illinois has been terrific this season. I think they're like 18-2 when they've done that so far this year. That's the path for this group. They create good shots, but they have to knock them down. And now there's no excuses anymore. None. Merez Johnson's healthy. Tomi Avicic is healthy. Kasperis Yakushonis is healthy. Will Riley's playing the best version of himself. Like he looks like a potential top 20 pick. It's now or never for an Illinois team that got a great draw. Now you have to go out and string 2 good games together, which has been really hard for this group for the past 3 months.
All right, guys, I would be remiss if I didn't give the people at home just a couple other things to take with them as they're filling out their bracket in this Midwest region, because as I said, I think this is the region of potential first-round upsets. Keep an eye on High Point and Purdue. I understand. I think this is actually a pretty good matchup for Purdue, but High Point is one of those teams that has the metrics of a giant killer because they're a top 25 offense in the country. They shoot a lot of threes. And when they knock down three-point shots, they're capable of beating anyone. The problem is going to be on the defensive end of the floor. Can they guard Purdue? That's going to be the challenge, whether or not Braden Smith is just able to pick them apart. So keep an eye on that one. Another one to keep an eye on is this UCLA-Utah State game, 7-10. The winner of that would get Tennessee. That, to me, is another interesting one. And then I'll say this. Nobody is talking about Troy, but one of you guys just alluded to it. I don't know what Lamont Butler's status is for this one. They say he's going to try and play. Keep in mind that Kentucky has been starting Travis Perry at the point guard position for the last at least the last month here. Travis Perry wasn't even in the rotation to start the year. He was their 3rd string point guard, a local Kentucky kid who they took last year with the promise of developing him in what they hoped would be a 4-year career. Now all of a sudden he's their starting point guard by default. They lose Jackson Robinson. They lose Kirk Kriisa, and Lamont Butler is trying his best to play through it. Those were their 3 primary ball handlers. And what Mark Pope has done with this team to try and figure out how to scrap their way into some wins has been beyond commendable. But at some point, you've just got to worry about somebody who can really turn them over.